In this movie, we've been asked to show how to create the surfaces that would allow you to make a model train front here from a block of wood. And so we're going to take a piece of wood that looks like it's already been molded in many ways. It's already been given a beveled on the edges, and it looks like there's some bottom work done that might already be done on this piece. So we're going to primarily attack this as though we're just creating this top surface here, the front and the front windows, the top of the engine, and the front of the engine. And these are all pretty steep vertical surfaces, and whenever you're creating a 3D relief, those are always going to stretch your surface out quite a bit. And when you're toolpathing them, you know, there are certain toolpaths that looks like the hatch fill might be able to work here, but if we were to try and do a toolpath that went vertically along perpendicular to the edge, you might notice a lot of up and down motions. So that's why we're going to, when we toolpath this, do it with a hatch fill. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use sweep two rails. And anywhere you see here a surface, we're going to draw a rail here, we're going to draw a rail here, and then sweep a profile between them. We're going to draw a rail along each of these flat surfaces and sweep a profile, and then another vertical rail. So that's the process we're going to use here. What I'm going to do is actually use the photo here to kind of draw my rails and let me see where they need to be. And I've created a material size here that is 12 inches by 4 by 4. So you can see if we go to F12 here that we're kind of taken this block and made it a long part. I'm not exactly sure how long this is. It might be a little longer than that, 16 inches or so, but we're just going to use 12 for right now. So let's come here now, and I'm just going to first of all go to my rectangle tool and kind of give myself a little top line and bottom baseline here, and I'm going to have this terminate just about where the front of this material of this train is. I'm going to zoom in there a little bit, but I think that's pretty close. Here we go, and just a shade more. All right, so this is going to represent my 4 inches, and even though I don't have it 4 inches now, I'm just going to scale it when it comes time to do that. But this is going to represent my 4-inch height of my part. So I'm going to use that to help me out a little bit here. Now the first thing I'm going to do is draw this part, which is the rail right here, going up and down on this front side. So I'm going to do that by just going to the draw point mode, and let's zoom in here with our scroll wheel and put one point here, and we're going to put, let's go ahead and snap this to the line. Let's snap the guideline here, there we go. We're going to snap this right about here. Okay, so now we've created this line. Now this looks like it has a little bit of a curve to it, so we're going to come here to point edit mode, and we're just going to drag a small little curve there, and you could use you could actually create a curve with 2 points, a Bezier curve, and draw it, or I'm just going to go ahead and use this little arc here, but that can be any kind of shape you want. Now I'm going to draw another profile here, and I'm going to zoom in right about where it looks like that midpoint is, and now I'll snap this to the end point. So I've drawn these two shapes, and again I'm going to come here. Maybe this one I'm going to convert this to curve and give myself some handles I can work with here. Okay, so I've now drawn these two shapes. I'm also going to draw here point that goes, if I want to make it straight, I can hold down my shift key, point that goes just about here, and I'll snap here again to the end and draw a point that seems to just follow the edge here, and we can be as precise as we want. I'm not going to worry about too much because it's kind of hard to be precise without knowing a little bit more specific. So I'm just going to eye it up here and kind of make it look like what I see here. So what that's going to give me now is, I'm going to make a copy of this. Gives me these contours here that I'm going to use as the basis for my part. And now I'm going to scale this. I'm going to hit F2, and we're going to scale this height to 4 inches. Okay, so now this is going to represent these parts here, and this is at the very top of the material. Now what I'm going to do is select this part and this part and this part, and it looks like there's one more line I forgot actually, so I'm gonna back up here a little bit. So you can see that little that part that comes on and tells me that I'm snapping to the point there. This should be flat, so I'm going to hold my shift key down, and there's my second line. So that is one line I forgot. I'm going to again hit my control key and just drag this out here to make a copy. And we'll go ahead and, as I keep looking here, I'm finding one more piece I'm missing. I can create one more of these that just goes right along that path. All right, now I believe we have everything. I'm going to drag this over here, and this is going to represent our parts, and we're still going to resize this to 4. All right, now I'm going to take this piece here, and I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to merge this into one continuous piece, and I'm going to flip it 90 degrees in the x-axis. I'm going to look at this from the side, and I can see my part here. I'm going to move it so that the top is right at 0. So that should position it properly for me. And now I'm going to take this part, and we're going to move the Y, or excuse me, the X, which is the front here part, to 12, and the Y to 0. All right. Actually, we're going to move this part here to 12. So by selecting this, I'm selecting this rightmost handle, the upper right handle, and I'm telling it I want to be, the top of this is at 0, the Y is at 0, which puts it right here along the edge, and then the X is at 12, and that's the most front part there. Okay, so I can see this right here. Now the other rail I need to get, so let's come over here. We're going to select these 3 parts, holding down the shift key, and move these down as well. I'm going to merge these back together into one closed shape. Now I'm going to hit F2. We'll do that same rotation. Now if I want to, I can just come now and hit Control 6 from the number pad to the right of the keyboard, and I won't, that'll save me the process of coming here and using this particular dialog box. By hitting that Control 6, it moves it to the right middle part of the plate. Now we're going to make sure that it's correct from the distance perspective, so we're going to put a Z here. We do need to do one little change. Well, now we have those 2 parts located right where they were before, but from the side I can see them in the front here. Now typically when working on a relief, I would tend to keep 0 as my baseline of the relief, and anything I build up from that will be up from 0, and anything down will be down from 0. But when I wanted to use my material to kind of help me visualize the surface that I'm creating. So in this case, I'm actually going to make my relief at -4 inches, because that's the thickness of my material. So I'm actually going to be creating this particular relief in the proper location in the material. Normally I would design it 0 and then move it into the plate as a last step prior to toolpathing. So this is a case where I'm doing things a little different than I otherwise would. Now when I do sweep 2 rails, I'm going to sweep this section, and this section, and then make a copy of that. I want to do them separately, because if I did one continuous path here, it's likely going to introduce a little bit of variation into the path, and I want these to each be separate surfaces. So I'm going to come here and explode them before I do my sweeping. Let's hit F10 and make sure that we have our direction arrows and everything, but we're sure these are going to be going in the proper direction. All right, so let's come here now and start creating our surfaces. I'm going to use the sweep 2 rails here, And one thing I need to do is, before I use Sweep to Rails, I've created my rails, but I haven't created the profile. Now I'm going to allow the difference in the points for, and I'm holding my shift key down here just to create a straight line. I'm just going to use a straight line for my profile, and I'm going to allow these differences in these points to create the curved surface. I could put a little curve in my profile if I wanted, but I don't believe that'll be necessary. So I'm going to now come here and go to Sweep to Rails. I don't have a relief selected, so I need to create mesh objects. And I'm going to put in 100 by 100 to get a nice surface there. My wizard here is telling me to select the first rail. I'm going to start off by doing this front part. Hit the next arrow button. Select the second rail, which is actually this middle rail. Select the sweep sections, which is 1, 2, and as long as I don't see anything that looks crossed there, I'll hit my part, my check mark, and I'll see that I've created this face surface here. Sweep to Rails is anytime you have this type of surface where you can actually draw the edges of the part you want, it's going to be a good way to get a surface. Now I'm going to do this middle surface here. So I'm again going to go to Sweep to Rails. Mesh is selected. Select the first rail, second rail, sweep section, 1, 2, and notice the way I'm using all 4 views here whenever possible to make it easier on myself. Finally, I'm going to do this top part here, and actually I'm going to do one more thing. Before I get started here, I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a line, and I want this line to be at the top, which it is. We're going to continue this a little bit. Now I'm going to keep my snap to endpoint on, go to move, tell it I want to make a copy, move this point to here. That way I just easily made a copy of those 2 lines, right? Because I do want to create a surface also to represent the flat top of this part. So now I'm going to go back again to Sweep to Rails. We're going to go to the first rail, second rail, and you select whichever rails are easiest to click on. Sweep sections 1, 2. You can see how now we're filling that out nicely, and the last one will be here. And I didn't have to go back that far. In fact, I can come here and let's do a little trim by length. Let's see, that looks like maybe a 1 inch length. So we'll just trim 1 inch off of each of those. And the last one we're going to do now is Sweep to Rails. This part, this rail, and my sweep sections 1, 2. That little beveled part is already in the material, so I don't need to worry about doing that as part of my relief. Now I've created my part here. I should be able to come here and take a look at this and see if it meets the requirements that we have for creating the surface. If it does, then I can proceed with making a copy of this first of all. So I'm going to select each of these sections by holding my shift key down. I'll group it just to keep them all together now. Mirror the part, make a copy, vertical mirror. I can see from my preview that's not the part of it I want, so I'm changing my orientation there and hitting apply. Now I've got 2 parts of this piece, and I'm going to group them together so I can just click any part and I select all of it. Alright, now we're ready to make our relief. I've got another layer here from when I imported that bitmap, so I'm going to use this as my relief layer. From the top view, I'm going to create the shape that's going to become my relief. So I'm going to turn on my other layer here just so I can see it. I don't really see the need to go ahead and make this entire area my relief, so let's just say we're going to go 5 inches for the width and then 4 for the height. I'm not going to worry about placing it. Instead, I'm just going to hit Control 6, and that's going to move it to that same front middle part of the plate. Now I can turn off my other layer if I want to get rid of that for a moment. I'm going to go to my relief tool. This is a fairly small relief, so I'm going to bump up my resolution. I have a lot of vertical surfaces there, and I need some points to help me do all that. In fact, when I think about it, I'm going to make that 300. I'm going to start off with a flat, no thickness relief. And that's just gold there. Now, remember I said I was going to move this down into the material. So I could just come here actually and hit move to bottom of plate. And that will move that relief down to the bottom of my plate. So now it's resting at the bottom. When I turn on the other layer, it's resting at the bottom of where my train's going to be. Let's zoom back into this so we can make this easy on ourselves. Now I'm going to select my relief and the mesh by holding the shift key down and selecting both. Add mesh to relief, add to relief, and apply. All right, now I'm going to hit close, and I can see that my relief has been created from the mesh. I can turn off my other layers, so now I'm just going to see my relief, and I can see that I've created a part that has the surfaces, a little bit of roundness to them, and I can really adjust these rails any way I want. You can change these rails. You could put a little bow in here by putting a bow in your profile instead of sweeping a straight line between here. If you wanted to make this look a little more new type of thing and you wanted a bow in here, you could add that. There's a lot you could do by changing either the profile or the rails. Now we're going to toolpath this, and we have extended a fair amount past there. I'm not sure we need to do all that. Let's come here and let's draw a little rectangle on our own. Well, looks like we have a snap on here, so we're going to turn that off. All right, and we're going to do this. Now let's go to our rectangle. We're going to do our mask here. We always like to mask our toolpath so it doesn't apply where it's not needed. So I'm going to do that easily by coming in here and saying insert a point. And I don't even know if I need to toolpath this whole area or not. You know, mostly I just actually let's redo this one. I'm going to hit Control Z. Let's get this back to a rectangle there, and then let's move this one over here. Okay, now I'm going to insert a point. Just use my point edit mode here and use that to kind of decide where this toolpath is going to be masked. I want to give enough room for my tool to reach all the way down to the bottom and come back up. So I'm moving the front of this out a little bit. Now I select my relief and my toolpath mask. I'm going to go to hatch fill. For this job, I'm just going to use an island fill. I'm going to check apply overcut. I don't want tool compensation. I don't need to enter an overcut amount because I've already decided how much I want to go past the relief when I created this masking contour. But I do need to come up here and select my ball nose tool. Now, when I defined my 1/4 inch ball nose tool, I wanted to be able to do up to 4 inches in a single pass. So I'm not sure what material we're cutting this one out of yet, but I'm going to make an assumption here that it's something we can cut out easily with one pass, at least for our 3D, which we would make it that if it wasn't by doing some 2D rough passes. So I'm going to come here and apply a 4 inches, and we're going to go 90% overlap. All right, now we'll come here and got one pass, and of course you always have to enter your feeds and speeds. With all that vertical travel, I'm not sure if we'll actually reach 300 inches a minute very often, but we're going to go ahead and apply that feed rate. So now we're applying our toolpath. Obviously there's a lot of material removal here, and so we need to definitely do a rough pass on this. So within this same area here, I'm going to select both of these. Let's come here to island fill, and we're going to choose we could either choose this ball nose tool here. Let's say we'd probably use an end mill on this one. All right, so I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. All right, now looking at this part, if I recall, let's go back here again. I want to see this from the side view here. Here's our tool path that we're going to cut. So it looks like we're going to need to tool path here. Go down about 1 inch. That's how much material we're going to rough out. So we just wanted to see that here. So when we go to island fill, and we actually have a tool path saved here with a 1/4 inch end mill, we're going to tell it to go down to say 0.9 inches. Well, if we're going to go down 1 inch, 0.9, we're going to offset 1/8 of an inch. Yeah, we'll go down 0.9 inches. We'll do this in 3 tool paths, or 3 passes, excuse me. We're going to offset. Well, we must have a problem there because we don't have offset from relief check. So we're going to select this one again. Oh, I see. It's because our strategy wasn't for a 3D toolpath when we saved it, so that's all right. We'll just come back here again and create this one on our own. We've got a 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to go 0.9 for the depth. We're going to go ahead and allow this one to overcut. Yeah, we'll say we'll allow the overcut here, but it's not going to likely do very much overcut. And we'll say 0.125 for the value. Sometimes the overcut amount can mess with the rough pass a little bit. We'll make sure we don't accidentally cut into our surface by offsetting from it. And we just want to do a 2D step rough with this one. 50% is fine, and again we're going to do that in 3 passes. So you can see here now that we've created a little bit of a rough fill, and that's going to come down here and just remove those passes, allow my other part to do its job. Now let's simulate this, but there's no point in simulating more than we need to, so we're going to draw yet another contour that is going to mask where our tool path applies. And let's go here to simulation. There's our rough cut, and there's our detail cut. So with this kind of vertical surface, you know, you're just going to see a little bit of this type of thing. I don't know. We could probably play around with which surface is there by altering those rails or putting a little thing, but I would imagine you might have a little sanding to do after the fact on this, just because there's so much of a nearly vertical drop off. Well, this has been an overview of how to create a front of a train using the Sweep 2 rails from EnRoute software, and how to go ahead and toolpath that as well.